back of the rim. Garnett on the slam and Using Curry way downtown. Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Today we are simply going through the Eastern Conference and doing standings predictions for the 2026 NBA season. Of course, this has become a lot more annoying with the play-in, but I'm going to make it clear which 6 teams I think will be there, and then go through the teams I think have a chance through the play-in. Then a week from now, we will do the Western Conference, which is a lot tougher. But first, a word from today's sponsor, Uber Eats.
Shout out to Uber Eats for sponsoring today's video. If you're not familiar by now, well, you should be. With my erratic work schedule, I've been using Uber Eats to fill in the blanks for years now. Whether it's an editing or a stream day, I'm able to either go back and pick a favorite or choose something new. Then boom, all the hassle of taking that time out of my day to actually go and get the stuff eliminated. But specifically to Uber Eats, I love the Discover tab. It's always showing new deals and local spots so that you don't fall into that trap of just ordering the same thing over and over again. You can track exactly where everything is, toggle the options to have them handed to you or leave it at the door, and by the time I'm done with whatever task it was, there's a meal ready. With my group I do content with, we often use the group order feature. Everybody's able to add what they want to one order, and now the whole team eats. Order from hundreds of restaurants on the Uber Eats app and discover new deals every day. Use promo code DOM15 to get $15 off your first order with a minimum basket size of $20. Once again, shout out to Uber Eats for sponsoring today's video. Cleveland stayed relatively sturdy over summer after the East was shaken up. We're aware of the magnificent 2025 campaign after Atkinson shook things up, and I expect the identity is clean going forward. Especially if Evan Mobley gets even more comfortable with how Kenny used him, the double big lineup should still overwhelm a lot of teams. There is a wrinkle with the wings that made me take a second to decide if I'd keep them first or not. While Strus is going to miss some time with the Jones fracture, I'm left to wonder if having DeAndre Hunter start for a while is just going to be even better. He's been a good shooter most of his career, and he hit 42% after the trade. Defensively, he fits the way Atkinson wants to toggle matchups, which will have Garland more comfortable out there. It's not the same movement shooting as Strus, but it'll absolutely suffice as a placeholder. As far as the backup point guard, it's hard to ignore what Ty Jerome provided, even if it massively dropped off in the postseason. In his place, Lonzo gives them a big guard who can defend, push pace, move the ball without hijacking possessions, and potentially serves as another defensive option when Garland is being hunted. If he's available. He's never played more than 63 games in a season, and most recently only appeared in 35 after 2 years. It's a very hard sell to push that he'll be consistent, and the Cavs need him to be consistent. He's not just a luxury here. So yeah, where health is concerned, there's certainly room for them to be hindered and end up sliding back a spot or so. Relative to the conference, however, there's not enough here yet for me to bump them out of the 1 seed. Though, I could easily see a world where they finish second to New York. The Knicks did not overhaul the roster in light of Giannis being interested in them as a destination. They're coming off an Eastern Conference Finals run that, at a point, massively highlighted the need for new coaching. 2025 ended with a lot of Brunson ball. As games winded down, he'd dominate possessions, and you could see the ceiling on that version. The goal now is to squeeze more out of the lineups without living or dying by how tough of a shot he can make. For better or for worse, Jordan Clarkson has been contracted to possibly help there. It's another shot creator who can soak up second unit possessions while Brunson takes his breathers. Brogdon was also brought in this manner for the ball handling. And then, starting the year with Mitchell Robinson healthy matters. While his free throws are a massive downside, his minutes actually changed the math against Boston early in the series. There are also situations where Cat just does not need to be the center on defense. The last few seasons, they've barely had him at all. If he's around consistently, they're going to win a few more specific matchups they dropped last year. That being said, I've still got them second. From where we are today, it's difficult to say how well Mike Brown's new offense will mesh, or how long it'll take to adjust. Also, I flat out assume Robinson is good for a chunk of missed games, even if it's just resting him to have him fresh for April. Still, the only team separating them from Cleveland in the standings last year? Yeah, they're not likely to even be in the top 4 in 2026, so I'm comfortable with their placing here. And just like that, this is where the East turns into a wild card. The Celtics and Pacers, no matter how the year breaks, aren't sitting in contender territory for the year. Orlando, on the other hand, was already a good bit better than their 500 finish described. Remember, KCP was the only starter to crack 60 games. Even appearing in postseason action was a miracle. Now throw Desmond Bane onto a team who just had really bad luck for a year. The fit is obvious. Last year, the Magic could really bother you, as the 5-man lineup of Cole Anthony, KCP, Franz Paolo, and Wendell Carter ranked 5th for lineups that caused the most turnovers. Of course, Cole has moved on, but drop Bane onto this. Elite shooting gravity, sturdy on-ball D, which are both things the Magic needed more of to make the leap.
Alo and Franz are about to see some of the best spacing of their career so far, and the results could also tell a lot about their futures. Assuming everyone down to the team trainer isn't injured for half the season, they should finally capitalize on the potential we've been discussing for some years now. With the field wide open, out of all the teams left, I trust them the most to catapult. I split hairs at the 4th spot, and in the end, I'm going with Atlanta. They added enough defense and shooting to raise the floor in my opinion. Getting Jalen Johnson back for a full run continues the promising direction shown for a little while last year. And if the young guys hit their mini leaps, I'm banking we should finally see some forward movement from this franchise. I take this gamble well aware that Kristaps will probably be in and out. He was always low risk, high reward since he's expiring, but there's enough to be excited about here whether he's spreading the floor or not. The added spacers mean you can keep 2 shooters on at almost all times. And when he's available, the ultimate offensive engine that is Trae Young should see one of his most efficient seasons. Aside from health, the gamble is related to the fact that these are a lot of young players growing at once. While Trae has been an established star for some time now, it's never just a given you'll see young players mesh while trying to win. This feature makes the Hawks one of the more unique team builds. At this point, Trae is supposed to be playing with another superstar by now, so watching them try to strive in a weekend conference while simultaneously growing is going to be an experiment for sure. I wouldn't place a team like this in the top 4 under usual circumstances. Detroit had their most promising campaign in years during 2025 and came this close to making New York blink in round 1. They replaced the lost shooting over summer well enough to keep the spacing steady. In a weaker East, this alone keeps them trending up, even if the roster didn't actually change a ton. Because it'll depend mostly on internal jumps, like if Cade takes another step, I didn't want to push them up too far. That's as much of an unknown as what Jaden Ivey will look like returning from a broken fibula. If he's still a reliable spacer and can continue to grow as another scoring option on one of Cade's wings, there's even more room for them to grow. Until we see the specifics over time, I'm comfortable forecasting a marginal jump, which, if it means anything, did actually put them above Milwaukee if you didn't notice. So this was difficult. As mentioned at the beginning, limiting these predictions to 6 spots over the years has been tough. At face value, you're basically saying you're not confident if the rest of the teams will even make the playoffs. And especially out west, a lot of times this is simply circumstance. So I'll explain why I let Milwaukee in, then speak to the rest of the teams you're probably still wondering about. Giannis is a rule breaker archetype. And while no one player can go all the way with average or below average talent, he can definitely guide regular season success. Even then, I'm only letting this slide because while it's never taken much to qualify in the East, that is especially true this year. For what it's worth, they structurally sort of fit. Think the 2018 Cavs. One all-time engine with the pieces that can play off of him. Of course, the top of the East was weaker back then, and there almost is no good comparison for 2018 Braun. Here, Milwaukee does have shooting around Giannis and a big who hypothetically fits what he needs next to him at center. Still, the optimism kind of stops there. They had Damian Lillard once upon a time. Now you're down to KPJ at the 1, and the rest of the guys around Giannis are the definition of role players, and in some cases, not really great ones. The only saving grace here is you've got plenty of shooting options for Giannis, but here at 30 years old, he's about to have to hit gas possibly the hardest he ever has to see any kind of success. He's made it clear he expects to still be competing and has done more than enough to let on how he's not sure what's next. He came out and said himself this year would be a challenge. Long story short, the runway isn't long or certain. And this is the worst roster he's had since he began contending. Those are exactly the type of problems that can derail a season. But yes, I do see enough here to see them squeezing into the bracket. In today's league, he probably isn't getting traded mid-season, and there is enough here for them to win regular season games. And now we're at the teams who I didn't feel like could guarantee a spot. Buckle up. Let's start with the finals runner-ups, as they are obviously the most glaring omission. I know Miles Turner wasn't impressive the last time you saw him, but losing him isn't just losing a name. Turner gave you 2 blocks a game while spreading the floor efficiently. That pick and pop gravity combined with his specific size isn't something they replaced over summer. Obviously, this is a very deep and versatile team who will compete and throw out some great lineups, but as it pertains to this video, Isaiah Jackson, Jay Huff, and Wiseman are not structural replacements. This is all before we even talk about Hallie's absence. Recall how Indy's run was partly surprising in the first place due to this not being the same team when he isn't right. For the beginning of last season, he wasn't right, and the record reflected it. he's most likely gone for the year. The caveat, of course, being Andrew Nembhard looked a lot like a player who's itching for a shot at being the primary ball handler. Hell, while Reese rested his injury on the court, Drew straight up played that role for stretches. I think he is going to benefit massively. I don't think I feel good guaranteeing them a spot over any of the other 6 with this many moving parts. That being said, there's no reason they couldn't sneak into the top 6 or qualify through the play-in. Remember, they managed to keep Game 7 close without Halliburton. They are deep. Expect them to be competing for a spot regardless. Not only would it have looked straight up biased for me to give the Celtics a spot after spring's turmoil, I'm literally just not convinced yet. With Jason Tatum out of the equation and the money-saving moves they made to prepare for a down year, the roster looks exactly as awkward as it should. But it just gets downright grim when you get to the big man rotation. Even if Tatum made a miraculous return very late season the way they're talking about, the damage might have already been done. Though my fear is the back half of the East will be so average, if he's pushing for it at the time, they really might be within striking distance to justify it. Paul George did something similar in 2015 off the broken leg. I personally hope this isn't the case. Sure, we don't have any data on a player like Tatum suffering this injury so early on, but in a year where you've got no shot at a title, what could possibly be worth the risk of rushing back? His injury aside, there's not enough here to be confident enough to guarantee anything. I'm very sure Peyton Pritchard might see another jump from the increased shots. I love Derek White still being around, yet as he's headed to 31 years old, given Boston's situation, I haven't ruled out the possibility they cash out on him, especially if he also sees a jump from the increased role. Okay, but just evaluating the talent that's there, you can understand any optimism until you get to the front court. As wild as it may sound, yes, Finals MVP Jaylen Brown is going to have to convince a large crowd he's actually capable of being a successful first option long term. We've rarely ever seen him without Tatum on the other wing, and his issues over the years have been well documented. If Brown ends up average on top of the other roster questions, probably kiss the playoffs goodbye, but I'm not expecting him to be that average. And then Anthony Simons there as well, who is going to be trying to prove himself in a contract year. There is enough perimeter talent here to compete for an Eastern spot. I don't think you can guarantee it though. In Toronto, I just don't see the spacing. We're entering year 5 of waiting on the full Scotty Barnes breakout, who might end up just being a really great glue guy. And while they made big moves on paper, I need to see what it looks like on the floor for an extended period before I just pin them in. Not only has Scotty had trouble staying on the floor recently, he's now sharing it with Brandon Ingram, who has also routinely missed games through his entire career. I think it's fair to say for a team who lacks shooting and consistency, from their best players specifically, how could I guarantee it? Still should be a fun experiment. Yeah. Philly is now just stuck between timelines. Embiid and Paul George are pretty obviously going to continue to float in and out of the lineup, while the McCain, Edgecombe, and Maxey youth movement will swap nightly between finding their way as young players in the league and supporting a process that's supposed to be contending. You know, it could turn out great. McCain showed promise in his limited time last season, and there's no telling what you'll get from Edgecombe yet, which is precisely why I wouldn't guarantee a franchise as chaotic as Philly anything headed into 2026. Embiid has already basically said he's going to take whatever time he needs to remain healthy the entire year. PG is starting with another surgery. Both guys are contracts Philly damn near can't get rid of, and they last a while longer. It's a weird case. They certainly have the talent, but none of these structure for me to make them a comfortable pick. And finally, how about Heat culture? I know it isn't the case, but the 2020s have felt like a long version of one story where they're constantly just surviving the regular season, praying they'll be able to put it all together in the final months, so you just never know what to expect coming into the year for them. I'm not comfortable with their point guard rotation, I'm just not. Norman Powell was a great addition, but here's a guy at age 31 talking about making the All-Star team as his main goal, while Tyler Hero talks about getting the same love as D Wade one day, all while we continue to wait on Bam to take one last leap. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with goals, but those goals strike me as a bit conflicting on this roster. Once again, no true point guard. Zero clue as to what version of Andrew Wiggins you'll get or how much. After those, you're down to watching what happens with Jovic and Khalil Ware as the projects. All of this before you even get down to hoping and praying the regular ailments don't take chunks out of the campaign. Though let's back up a bit, I will give props to Khalil Ware. I think this is going to be a great player. If the shot stays consistent, that's an extra piece to throw out there with Bam, and it's another big. So pending how his play translates to regular season and what the development is like, it could shake things up. I would keep an eye on it, and that's why the Heat are here. I wouldn't count them out of competing for a playoff spot. I just wouldn't guarantee it. So as of right now, that is where I would place everyone in the Eastern Conference. But of course, if this season is anything like last year, injuries can make it irrelevant all in like 2 weeks tops. Either way, let me know what you agree or disagree with in the comment section. Also hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications every time a new video video drops. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.